Is it doing the thing? It says it's doing the thing. It says I'm live. It says I'm live. I see the little buttons going down here. Okay, we're live. All right. So, everybody, welcome back. We are doing another live. I tell you, the reason why we're doing a live, and I put this one on here, and the reason why I did this specifically is because you guys remember we're on sort of a video hiatus right now, right? So, I'm not producing any videos, but this last weekend was the week. Well, this not this last weekend. The weekend that we're in right now is the weekend of Fan Expo. So the result of that is I've actually done 2 days of Fan Expo at this point in time, and I've had some really, really cool experiences during that time. And I said, you know what? I should probably share these, even though I'm on a bit of a video hiatus right now because I've got so much reading to do. So I said to myself, okay, stop. All right. Let's just stop for a second. Normally, I would just shoot a video for this. Let's do this. A little, maybe about there. All right. I said, we're going to shoot a video for this. But the problem is, and this is something that's just one of those weird, like, let's lift the veil and look behind the screen here. We're like Dorothy trying to see the Wizard of Oz. The bottom line here is that while I was doing all this reading, I ran into a massive infection issue. And I got to tell you, keeping my breath and not getting like super winded right now is ridiculously difficult for me. So as I was trying to record a video to walk through all the really cool experiences that I had, I found myself getting winded and I couldn't produce the video. So I said to myself, okay, self, why don't we just record this as a quick live? I said, we'll do as a live, we'll stick it on the channel. It'll be there as a historic. People can run into it. I have no expectation that anybody will actually pop into this one, but we'll keep it as a video record for you guys so you can check it out and I can give you my thoughts quickly about Fan Expo Canada 2024, just based on the first 2 days that I've attended. Now, today, the day I'm recording this live, is a Saturday, which technically I guess is day 3 of Fan Expo, but I didn't go. I don't go. Why are there balloons showing up on my screen? This is because I made some sort of weird hand signal. Forget that. Okay, so I don't normally go to the Saturday because I know Saturday typically is a really hectic day. So I avoid that day. For example, today Rosario Dawson was going to be there. Dolph Lundgren's going to be there. As far as comic talent go as well, Scott Snyder was going to be there, but only on Saturday. So you have a bunch of people that only show on the Saturday. So there are certain people that will only buy tickets for the Saturday. In fact, I know somebody that's actually at the show today, and they've already sent me messages saying, like, it's a rough day to be at the show. So probably not. Yeah, I probably made the right choice there. Let's put it that way. Anyway, so I'm not going to attend today. Tomorrow being Sunday, I am going tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be a day that's very much a family day for me just to wander around. I'm particularly looking forward to walking through the Squishymallow booth. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. There's a Lego booth, there's a Paramount Plus booth, there's a Disney Plus booth. All sorts of stuff's going to be there. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, and that should prove rather interesting. But for now, we'll just talk about the comic and the artist experience that I had up until now. Because as I say, we're only on day 2. So you guys have been watching this after the fact because I'm going to save it and stick it on the channel. For those of you who are watching this. So here's the scuttlebutt, and you guys know this. I am a Cananophile. I talk Conan, I talk Robert E. Howard, I talk all that normal stuff. I don't talk comics a lot on this channel. I talk comics, but just not a lot. So the result of that is that we really don't spend a lot of time talking about, DC books or Marvel books or anything that happened along the way. What we talk about here is Conan and Cull, Solomon Kane, eventually Bram McMorrin. The whole Howard verse is expanding. We're going to get into that. But we don't really talk about a lot of comic stuff. So what I want to do today is I'll talk through a couple comic artists that I ran into while I was there and give you guys sort of the high level and the really cool experience that I had with them. And then we'll go and we'll talk about some of the comic artists that are in the industry that have nothing to do with Robert E. Howard properties. And we'll chat through those ones then, just to give you guys a sense of how approachable these people are. So I'm going to start going through this right off the bat. So we'll stick with the the Conan stuff first, because that's probably what the most of you who are watching this video are interested in. So I'll say the first person that I hunted down on my day 1 was Carrie Nord. Now, some of you will recognize the name Carrie Nord, some of you won't. Carrie Nord did some phenomenal work on Conan. Actually, where's my copy? Here it is. Yeah, he just did this, the cover for Savage Sword #3. In addition, he did a lot of the Dark Horse work when Dark Horse had the license for Conan the Barbarian. So he was the first person that I tracked down when I was at the show. Immediately got him engaged in working on a commission in the Tennessee Fast Traveling Sketchbook. And for anybody who's interested in that, later this week, if you're following me on Instagram, I will share the image that he did for me, which is a beautiful 2-page splash. I'm not going to spoil it. If you want to see it, check it out on Instagram later. There's a link in my channel about me thing. You can see that there. But really nice fella. Had some time to talk to him. We talked Robert E. Howard. We talked about Conan. He likes King Kull, which is cool. So he and I are gelling on that point. But really agreeable fella, really incredible art. I had him sign that Savage Sword I just showed you. And I also had him sign, I'm not even going to bother trying to dig it out because you guys can't see this. Around the computer right now are stacks of comics. I took 2 short boxes of books to this show, specifically to meet artists and talk to and get signatures from. So there's a lot here. So he did the Frost Giant's Daughter homage cover on one of the new Titan books. That I had him sign. Also had Jim Zub sign that as well. But Carrie, as I say, really nice fella, really agreeable, and wants to talk to you. That was a really cool experience. So that was Carrie Nord. The next person I tracked down when I was there was Jerry Dugan. Duggan? I think it's Dugan. Who is the individual who was the writer on the Savage Avengers run. So we did a review of the Savage Avengers. In fact, if you guys go back in the channel playlist, you'll see we did a video where we did one of the Robert E. Howard Battle Royales, where we compared the 2 different versions of Rogues in the House, where we covered Carrie Nord's version of that. So you can see samples of his work there if you're interested. I did actually take my copies of the Rogues in the House story, and I had him sign those. They're around here somewhere. So I'll showcase that later on. One of these days, I might have to do a live where I literally go book by book and show you guys everything that came out of this con, because there's a lot here. Anyway, but speaking particularly of Jerry Dugan, the Savage Avengers. Again, if you go back and you look at the playlist, you'll see we did a review of the Savage Avengers Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 1 being the one Jerry Dugan was involved with. And my comment on that was, this writer gets it. This writer got the memo. Standing in front of Jerry and pulling out my Savage Avengers #1 through 5 for him to sign, as well as a bunch of the 2019 Savage Sword of Conan series, which he wrote, was a great experience, because at that time, one of the comments that I made in my last review of that Savage Avengers was that this guy gets a lot of things that I identify with personally. So it was like he was writing to me personally, because there was a key reference in there to The Greatest American Hero. And I'm not going to spoil it. If you've read it, you know. If you haven't read it, you don't know, which is just fantastic. And I got to tell you, that one makes me happy. And when I discussed it with Jerry, he was happy. It was really cool. Jerry also mentioned he let me take a flip through a series he's working on right now with Image, which is called Following Love on the Way to Hell. Very cool series. Looks really, really neat. And the premise sounds pretty cool. I'm going to wait for he mentioned the trade paperback of the first story arc that's going to be coming out. I think he mentioned in January, February. Don't quote me on that. But I will be keeping an eye out for that so that I can read that, because I really like his work. He writes phenomenal. The Savage Avengers, I get it. It's not for everybody. There are canonical Conanophiles out there that are like, no, you can't do this. You can't bring Conan into the modern age. Honestly, I think he did a really fun and cool job bringing it forward. So Jerry Dugan was quite cool to meet. Who else we got over here that was a Conan person? Oh, you know one that really caught me off guard. It surprised me. Here it is. Steve McNiven. Do you guys remember? I did the review of this. Again, another video I did where I talked through the king size Conan and how cool that was. Go back and check it out. And I put this in front of Steve McNiven. Now, some people will do an issue of Conan or something within the IP of Conan or Robert E. Howard, but aren't really into it, right? Like, you can get people that are journeymen that come in and do the job, and then they move on to the next job. Well, I put this in front of Steve McNiven. And the funny part about it was, unprompted, he started a conversation. Well, again, it's not like I'm a stone. People talk to me. I talk back. When we were chatting, he went down this road to say that this was a great joy for him because when he was given the opportunity to do a story early in Conan's career, the story he specifically did in this book was right after the sack of Venarium. That was written by Roy Thomas. He was so eager, he just jumped right on it. And what's amazing about this was through the conversations we had, not only is it a Conanophile, so he and I are like, I'm picking up everything you're laying down here, Steve. Not only that, he then mentions that one of the books that he'd love to get his hands on is the Old Weird Tales, which was actually the original published work of Robert E. Howard when he published Conan the Barbarian, which I believe was the Hour of the Dragon story. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, like you're preaching the converted here, but you're talking not only Conan comics, you're talking Conan prose. And this is coming completely unprompted from a guy I didn't expect it. Honestly, really cool dude. And if you get a chance to talk Conan with Steve McNiven, by all means, make your way over there and do so. That was pretty cool. One of the ones that actually kind of caught me off guard that was a Conan artist that sort of made me go, oh, because the reaction was pretty cool, does anybody know Stanley Lau? You probably do. Stanley Art Germ Lau. A lot of his books have come out, and there's a lot of art he does. And he's particularly known for, I guess, sort of a cheesecake-ish type of cover. Phenomenally detailed and very realistic. But invariably what he's drawing are females on the covers. And he did his own version or his own variant for Conan the Barbarian #1. And I'm going to show you guys the black and white sketch version because the other one's pretty dark, which is this one. So I had him sign this. And I'll tell you, when I pulled this out, and I pulled this out because I had two for him to sign. I actually had another stack over here. But these two, when they saw, and he was looking at these, whoa. It was a funny thing because here's a guy who's like huge lineup. It was actually the largest lineup I ran into when I was there. Was waiting for him. Not because he's taking too long or anything like that, but just because it was a huge crowd to see him. And I got to tell you, when he flipped through those, he was like, "Oh, there was a moment of recognition," which I was like, "Really? It was just one of those funny ones where like that kicked. That was the one from you." And again, maybe I was generalizing. I was like, I wouldn't have expected that from a guy who does the group of work that he does. And it was just one of those cool moments. I was like, oh, okay. Now, I then later had both of the same books go over and Jim Sub signed them as well, which I'm very happy about. That made me a happy boy. But very cool to have Stanley Art Germ Lau have that sort of, oh, look at these sort of reaction, which was because you got to picture the number of books that this guy was signing in one day. It was phenomenal. Like the stuff coming across his desk was just whoa. And of course, the last person that would be a Conan person that I would mention is, and I just referenced him, is running into Jim Zub himself. Okay, so what do I say about this? Okay, you don't want to be that guy that's just sitting there completely like slack-jawed and fanboying at any given one point in time. And you don't want to be, because you want to respect the artist for what they do. And you want to be the person that's talking to them intelligently and saying, okay, like this is really impressive. This is the first chance I've had to meet Jim Zub. First chance I've had to chat with him. And I know he's a local Toronto guy like me, but I don't go and randomly run into other Toronto people all the time. It's not my thing. But to sit there and run into him in the con, and I'll tell you, okay, I'm going to tell you two things. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stick to two things here. Okay, first, let me grab this because I don't want to go into a coughing fit. So bear with me here. All right. Okay, two things. Here's my two things. One is a personal one to me, okay, which sort of made me go, oh. And the stupid part about it was I'm so dumb. I actually didn't get the importance of this reference until I was driving home about 5 hours later. That's a thing. And the second one is speaking to, I'm going to call it where this is going. And I'm not giving away any secrets because Jim's not giving any secrets to me, okay? But let's talk about the personal one first. So I'm walking through the show. I'm heading down this long corridor towards where I believe Jim's table is. And I'll tell you, I've got a dolly with two long boxes being dragged behind me through a crowd of people. It's not a fun way to move around, but it was what I was going for. Anyway, so as I'm going along, I'm looking ahead of me, and I see this fella, And I'm looking at him and I'm seeing this look of recognition in his eyes, but I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, I'm pretty certain that's Jim Sub himself. I was like, do I introduce myself? What do I do here? What's protocol? I've made a variety of videos talking about him and his work. Am I supposed to? Like, what's what? It was that moment where it was like the Oralnauts where they were riffing on Star Wars. Like, okay, do you talk first? Do I talk first? Anyways, so as I'm standing here looking at him, he looks at me and recognized me and Tennessee Fats, and I was like, and the funny joke that he made at the time. This is what didn't sink in with me until hours later, which truly shows how probably just agog I was at the moment. Was the comment he made was that I didn't recognize you without you jumping up and doing the thing, and I'm like, oh, okay, and we laugh about it, and he's like, hey, I'm heading back to my booth, let's walk over there, and we're talking Conan, and at no point in time does it sink in with me what he just said and the implications of what he just said, and this is all on me thing. This is not his fault at all, because I'm driving home from Toronto, because I drove in that day. I'm driving home from Toronto. I'm coming across the Gardiner, getting ready to go on the DVP. And suddenly it occurs to me, I was like, wait a minute. He said he didn't recognize, the joke he made was he wasn't sure because I wasn't doing the whole jump. And I was like, he watches my videos? That was literally at 8 or 9 o'clock. Well, it was closer to 8. Yeah, because I got Harvey's afterwards. Yeah, it was closer to around 8 as I'm driving home. And I was like, Jim Sub is watching my videos. And that's the moment. That was the personal moment for me. It was like, now, granted, I probably spent, and I feel bad, I probably monopolized in total on that day alone, probably about 45 minutes of Jim's time. I had a whack of books for him to sign. I had discussions. I had questions, and this is going to lead me to the second one. The second point I'm going to here, which talks to where are they going with this. Don't think I have insider information. I don't have insider information. I definitely do not. But I will say this. So a certain viewer, and you know who you are, and I have been tickety-ticketing, and we've been tickety-ticketing about what our suspicion is of what the Black Stone is. And I put the word "the" there for a reason. Or Blackstone. We've been talking about this. We have a suspicion, and I'll tell you. I one of the first things I said to Jim when he was back at the table was, "Okay, so we have this idea that it's this," and we were specifically speaking Lovecraftian at this point in time, and I didn't know the names. But I pulled up the phone and I said, "Okay, is it blank or blank?" And I again, you're saying to the writer here, what's going on? He's obviously not going to tell you. And he said, these are great guesses. And I was like, yes, they are great guesses. I concur. But it was just one of those weird, but I don't know. I cannot confirm or deny. But I can tell you this, me and the viewer are clearly thinking, Lovecraftian. And the really cool part about this was there was a Conan panel that happened on Friday at, was it 1 or 1:30? Does it matter? It doesn't matter. Anyways, it happened on Friday, and I attended that. And during that, because I don't know how many of you know this or have followed up on this, so this might be news to some of you, that it was announced at San Diego Comic-Con that Jim has signed up for another 3 years with Heroic Signatures to continue. And I think the number that he mentioned was that he's getting up to 50 issues of this title and this IP as the head writer. And that's pretty key. So here's a guy who has a chance to not only lay down all the scarecrows, but to also start saying, okay, well, I'm going to foreshadow this. I'm going to foreshadow that. This is what I'm building in. This is making it more palpable. And honestly, that was really cool because here you are sitting with the guy who's literally driving the bus. Like, this is the old Kramer moment. He's driving the bus. He knows what's going on here. And another thing that came out during that whole Conan panel was how appreciative he and Heroic Signatures are of those of us that are fans of what they're doing right now, and how much they like the fact that we actually are giving them the positive feedback. And this is one of those things I had to read between the lines at this point, but they appreciate that we're putting our money where our mouth is. When we said, bear with me, hey, print a black and white Savage Sword magazine, we bought it. We didn't just say print it, and then we just all stood in the background and said, yeah, whatever, that was nice. Thanks for doing it. So you want to keep asking for things? Maybe buy them. Now, I did not ask this during the Conan panel. Okay, let's do this. This is between me and all of nobody. All right. Here's the deal. I would like to ask, is Heroic Signatures going to go down the road of actually putting out a prose sort of magazine? I'm not saying Heroic Signatures needs to put out Weird Tales, but who the heck owns the IP, that name to that one right now? Could they do that? Could it be a thing down the road? Could this be part of the ongoing property that's being sold to the public that is not only Conan, but also Sword and Sorcery and fantasy and everything else that go with it? An actual prose magazine. Now, I didn't ask that, but it makes you wonder. It does. Okay, and that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to stop right there. I tell you, there were mind-blowing moments for me at this show. One of which was entirely personal. I'm not going to go into it here. I'll stick it in an Easter egg in one of my videos I'm going to record later when we get back to a regular recording schedule. And I'll tell you, absolutely mind-blowing. I think it was one of those personal watershed moments for me. I do. And I'm not downplaying that at all. It was personally, that was a thing. But okay, that's the Conan stuff. Now, for those of you who are interested in the comic stuff, I gotta tell you, you know who was there that was like, I'm talking serious shit level cool here. Okay, now there's a couple people here. All right, so one, and this is like an OG Marvel. And hold on, I'm actually gonna, I'm not even going to say the name because I can readily grab this. Come on, here. I said readily grab it, and then of course, okay. Anybody recognize this? Punisher War Journal number 2. I met Carl Potts there. Carl Potts. Okay, I'm not going to try to summarize his career. I'm not. If you want to summarize his career and you want to get a sense of who Carl Potts is, get yourself on the interwebs. Go check it out. This is OG Marvel stuff here. This is a guy who wasn't just, I plugged in for 5 minutes over here and then I unplugged. No, this is a guy who was there, who was making decisions, who was really owning the IP. That particular cover I showed you was because I stood in front of Carl and we talked for about a half an hour. And getting the stories from him, he explained some of the things that I've wondered for years. And he was able to put it so succinctly for me. So I understood. I was like, oh, that's where the power pack came from. Because you're sitting here and you're like, well, because we're chatting about the fact that, if you are the editor that you run the Punisher IP, you get to do all sorts of things with it. But if you don't know what you're doing, you can do all sorts of wrong things with it. And I was like introducing him to the power pack. And then he's like, no, the power pack was da-da-da-da. And I was like, oh, and it starts to all come together. Another funny thing, and this is a cool one, is I don't know how many of you actually own Punisher War Journal number 1. I took this and I had it signed by him. And I had it signed on the front. And here's the interesting thing. If you look on the inside of this cover, he purposely left a blank spot there for signatures. Now, that's pretty cool because back in the day, you signed the books on the inside. And I was like, ooh. And he showed me. We opened it up and we took a look. He's like, oh, yeah, this is where you're normally sign. I was like, yeah, very cool. Very cool individual. And I got to tell you, the stories he was telling, I was like, well, and I walked past him a couple times during the show, going back and forth up and down that aisle. And there were people clearly using the situation to get a lot of information from him that he was freely giving him. Very personal, very friendly fellow. That's another one that I would strongly suggest you make sure you meet. Now, I'll tell you, one of the ones, and this is speaking to me, Tennessee Fats, personally here, that floored me. And it's funny because the very next day on Instagram, I saw video footage of the lineups to see this very same person. They went all the way around the corner and then down this secret aisle behind him was Mark Silvestri. I got in the line to see Mark Silvestri, and I waited because I was like the third person in the line. I only waited for maybe 20 minutes. It wasn't very long. And I got to tell you, as far as OG comic dudes go, and again, bear in mind, I just came from meeting Carl Potts, who phenomenally humble, phenomenally personable guy. You got Mark Silvestri sitting there. Thanks everybody for waiting while he had to finish a sketch. apologized for the time. And I'm like, hey, dude, you're Mark Silvestri. You don't need to apologize to me. Watching you sketch was rewarded in and of itself. And I'll tell you, it was the most amazing thing because he's got this line of people behind me. And hold on, reaching on the world's noisiest chair. And I'll tell you, I brought some old stuff. So one of the ones that I brought is this, which is Conan. Notice this, number 135. This is one of his earlier works at Marvel, where he was doing the interior of this. And it's incredible because and I'll tell you the story. So he's sitting in front of me and he makes the comment. He said, this is the difference between a comic amateur and a comic professional. And I'm sitting there thinking, where do I go with this? How do I respond intelligently? How do I not sound like an ass responding to that statement? And then he starts telling me the story. This was early in his career. He got the script, like in this Conan fights a giant owl. Well, Walt Simonson did the cover on this. So he flips through it and he says, here's a look at my owl. And he goes through it and he flips through the pages and he shows it. And for those of you who want to know, you can look it up on Google and see the image yourself. Conan in this fights, a haunted owl in a forest as Mark Silvestri drew it, but the owl is literally owl-sized. Mark didn't get the memo because Walt Simonson got it. And on the cover, you have Conan fighting a giant owl, like giant. And it's funny because he was talking about it and he was saying, when I saw this, when it came out, and again, I'm going to paraphrase this, all right? He was worried about his career here. And he's like, because Walt Simonson got the memo, giant owl. He drew little owl. There's anything wrong with that, but that's what he drew. Very cool that he took the time to walk me through it. And he was floored that somebody brought this book from. The other one I brought was this, which is a Master of Kung Fu. This is, again, one of his earlier works. And he pointed out on this, was it this one or the Conan one? Where Marvel regularly misspelled his name on the credits on the interior, which I just thought was hilarious. The last thing that he signed for me that he was particularly floored by was the old ash cans. I brought in a couple ash cans, and we were talking about Cyberforce, and we were talking about Codename Strikeforce. And when we were chatting about it, I said, no, Cyberforce was my jam back in the 90s. This is the thing, the Image property that got me through. And I said, in fact, I even supported your Kickstarter when you came with the 30th anniversary, and I brought the exclusive that came with that. And after that, he was talking to me about what they have coming out, his favorite character being the Darkness, the fact that the Darkness was going to be coming out with a new series, keep my eye out for it. He was particularly happy to see that he was going to be able to sign this one. Also told me that this Bat guy apparently really likes to sign over top of the trade dress and the company logo a lot. Didn't know that, kind of neat. But either way, he was really personal about it. And then we did selfies with holding the books, which was really cool. Really nice personal. And for a guy that was an OG, this is the guy who left Marvel and went off to help form Image. That kind of, it's like, whoa. It's just floored me that this is what was coming out of this. And that conversation was happening, which was really cool. So if you ever have a chance to meet Mark Silvestri, by all means, don't assume that just because, he's the guy that's out there doing stuff and making it. At the end of the conversation, he literally said, I thank you for supporting it and continue to support it. We can't do what we do without the support of people like you. And phenomenal statement to come out of Mark Silvestri to me. Who am I? I'm just some schlep. I was like, okay, I'm in. What else do you need? Very cool meeting with him. Who else we got here that I wanted to talk about? That's a cool one. That's just a generally neat comic person to chat with. Oh, Jeff Johns. Jeff Johns and the whole Ghost Machine team. That was okay. So Jeff, all right, I'm going to talk Jeff Johns, and then we're going to talk about Don McTeague. Okay. Jeff Johns, many of you would probably know that name. Famous for writing a lot of really cool stuff. So when I saw the name Jeff Johns showing up at the Fan Expo thing on the here's our guest sort of thing, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I know the name Jeff Johns. Why do I know that name? Why is this? Why is who? And it took me about 3 days of thinking about this. And here's the answer. Do any of you remember when I talked about that I Think Kingdom Come story? And how it's my opinion that the last 4 pages of that, where they talk about Superman going back to his own Earth, this is the Kingdom Come Superman going back to his own Earth, and the future that works with him and what happens during that time is possibly the greatest Superman story ever written without any words. Anybody remember me talking about that? Jeff Johns wrote that. That was his. That was him. So as you can imagine, when I had the opportunity to meet him, there was a lot of controlling of the gushing. But it was Jeff, when you wrote the Thy Kingdom Come thing, and there's that Superman thing at the end of it, was that you that wrote that? He's like, what Superman thing? I was like, well, when he goes back to his, he's like, oh yeah, I just wrote that and I added it on the end. I was like, dude, that is the single greatest Superman story ever written. Like, do you understand that? And he humble about it. He's like, okay, yeah, well, I guess. Listen, people can hear so many comments. And he sort of brushed it off, but I needed to get it out. So that statement came out, and I actually took a bunch of my JSA for him to sign. I actually took comics number 900 with me. Had him sign that one because in this he wrote a story where Clark is hanging out with the Legionnaires and having pizza, and Brian Anderson, I think, was the other person I had to sign this one. Yeah, Brian Anderson, I had the other person I had to sign because he did some inking on this very same story. Very cool. I think I might get more people to actually work on this particular book and signing this one. But what was cool about this, and this is kind of neat, this is the importance of asking questions. So to get these books signed by Jeff Johns, there you go. To get these signed, you had to pay a certain amount per signature. I get that. I get it. I'm not slamming the industry or the system for that. I get it. That's fine. So as you're standing there and having the conversation, the two guys are in front of me in the line saying, well, are you getting a lot signed? And I was like, well, yeah, I got a stack over here. And like, well, this afternoon at the Ghost Machine booth, if you have Ghost Machine books, they're signing them for free, like gratuit. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. So if you have Ghost Machine books, don't pay for them now. Take them to the Ghost Machine booth later. Don't be a dick about it, but take them. So I did. And I got to tell you, let me reach over here. This stack of books, give them signed, was gratuit because I went to the Ghost Machine booth. And I got to tell you, there are some in here where I had, hold on. Yeah, for example, that's got 4 signatures on it. Yeah, the entire Ghost Machine is signed off on that because they all worked on it. Where's one of the other ones? Oh, they gave you ash cans if you were buying a book. That's got 5 signatures on it. I can go through all the people who have signed these things, but I don't think we need to here. So that was really cool. Like, they actually took the time to sit and just chat with you if you brought up your Ghost Machine books. And it's, as I was standing in the middle of that table where the panel of them were, I had to stop and say to Francis Maniple, I was saying Maniple. I might be saying that completely wrong. I had to say to him, listen, I discovered Ghost Machine and this company because of the YouTube videos that you're making. And it was one of those moments, I said, seriously, like I've been reading DC and I read a bunch of stuff, but I didn't really read a lot of indie stuff. And I watched your YouTube video about a day in the life of an illustrator in comics in the industry. And then I watched your next video where you were talking about the foundation and the forming of Ghost Machine. And that's what made me find out about this and then reach out to my comic supplier down in the States to actually get Ghost Machine books. And it's funny because he stopped at the moment and you can see him looking at the guys on either side of him. He's like, oh, so you mean I'm not making these videos for no reason? Like, they're actually, it was one of those, I'm paraphrasing, but it was one of those moments where it's like, yeah, like your videos did this. That's pretty darn cool. And they appreciated that, but they were really cool and they signed all this stuff. And their handlers or their people who are working for the industry that have got them in there were really cool about getting us through the lineup and make sure the whole thing worked very quickly. Now, the last person I want to chat about here on this one, because I'm running out of steam here, guys. We're 30 some odd minutes into me talking, is Don McTeague. Don McTeague, I wanted to meet because I'm not even going to try to find it. It's somewhere in here. I pulled out of mystery envelopes years ago, years ago is probably overstating it, a pearl linen variant of one of her covers for Coffin Comics. And one of my friends down in the States said, hey, listen, if you're there, can you pick something up for me from Dawn? She's my favorite artist. So I said, yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I was in the process of sending him a message afterwards. Said, oh, yeah, she was here, signing her stuff. And typically the phrase I use when I'm saying that people are happy is I use the phrase happier than a pig in shit. Don McTeague is possibly the nicest and sweetest person I've ever met in person at a show. She was so genuinely happy to talk to her fans. And I'm not saying she has no fans. She has lots of fans who are there lined up, and her work is phenomenal. So genuinely nice and happy. I had to actually delete that sentence because it felt wrong for me to use the phrase pig and shit in the same sentence with her name. She is ridiculously nice, and her art is phenomenal. And she was very nice with the whole process where I bought the book. We got a selfie taken together. So Rick, I got something coming down for you, incoming. And as well, I had her sign my books, which was really cool. So if anybody does get a chance to meet Dawn McTeague, by all means, meet her. Phenomenally nice. Her work is phenomenal. She's there isn't enough nice things I can say about her. I was only chatting with her for 20 minutes, and she literally presented herself that well when I met her. So yeah, really cool experience. Now let's talk about Fan Expo here and the administration around it. Here's my thoughts on this. I've been to Fan Expo in Toronto numerous years and numerous times. And every time I have an issue with trying to park in the southern parking lot and then walk into the building. It's either I can't park in the southern parking lot because even though it's the single closest parking lot to Metro Toronto Convention Center, South Hall, that's way down the 800 series, they close it off because the event is going on, which is stupid. There's spaces there. Why am I not able to park there? They let me in on parking on an exception this time on Thursday to get in there and park. And it's funny because the parking attendant made it very clear to me that he was letting me in on an exception, which was fine. But then told me, listen, if you're trying to come back tomorrow, it's not going to happen. You have to have a pass. I don't know where to get a pass, but either way, I was told that no, it's just not happening. So that was, that's a pain. So if you know Toronto, if you know the market and you're coming in and you're thinking you're going to park in the south lot, don't assume that because invariably you'll find that randomly it's closed on you. Parking the north one's fine, but then you have to go through the building and do this weird walk around. When I was talking to the info booth downstairs outside, and I was talking about parking on Thursday before I left, one of the things that they mentioned is they said, you can park on the opposite side in the towers over there for a fraction of the cost. So feel free. And it's a quick walk to surface level to walk directly in the Metro Toronto Convention Center from Blue Jays Way, I think it is. So that's something to think about. So if you are heading down there and you think about parking, try that instead. Don't assume you're going to park in Metro Toronto Convention Center itself because that assumption might not come true. So that's the one thing. Number two, check, and then check again on timing of when things are going to happen and who's going to be where when. And the reason why I say this is because every single time I have gone to Fan Expo in Toronto, where the website says that this guest will be here on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or anything of the sort, they're not all there. They are not. And it's not because they're not there because they're at the con and then they're off doing a panel. No, they're just not there. This time I can tell you one individual that I pulled a stack of books like that out is one of my favorite artists that's non-Conan. And I was like, oh boy, I'm finally going to meet this person. And I'll tell you, I've been trying to meet this guy now for about 4 years. No show on Thursday and Friday. And those are the only days that I was bringing my books. And I'm like, are you kidding me? They're supposed to be here Thursday and Friday. It says right online they're Thursday and Friday. I check out at the front desk. They're supposed to be there Thursday and Friday. Guess what? No, they're not there Thursday and Friday. How do I find out? Talking to the person at the booth next to them. Or sorry, at the booth next to the empty booth. So apparently check, and then a recheck is probably the way to go with that. Another thing that does come up is the miscommunication of timing. I'll tell you, the Ghost Machine signing that I mentioned over here, there was a timing disconnect where everything had been advertising. It was supposed to be at 5 o'clock. It was actually a 4 o'clock event. 5 o'clock, I believe, they were supposed to be off in a panel room hosting a Ghost Machine panel. So again, check, and check, because again, not always everything that's advertised or stated is actually what's happening. Another artist that was supposed to be there all 4 days, again, stack of books, not a big one, but like this. And these were books I specifically chose because they would be ones that I can get signed by 2 or 3 people at the show at one time, is only showing up for one of the 4 days. And that one of the 4 days, guess what? That's the day I'm not there today. So, oops. So for those of you who are thinking about going, that's my only 2 pieces of advice as far as, be really careful around this. As far as what goes well at the con, really, they do a fantastic job of hosting this. I know I came off automatically starting with the negatives. They do a great job hosting this show, considering the number of moving parts that are moving in this thing and how they have to manage all these volunteers and the same message being disseminated across hundreds of staff members. They do a great job. Artist Alley and the organization of Artist Alley, I do wish they would spread that out more. I got to tell you, there is a death march that goes down between the aisles and Artist Alley. And you guys can't even see this, but I'm literally doing steps where each foot is only going forward like a half an inch, because these people death march back and forth in these things. And then they get up to the end caps and they do the same thing on the end caps. So really the fastest way to make it from one end of the show to the other end of the show is to walk out through the food court, out into the main lobby, into the main doors, all the way north on the main doors, through the exhibitor area, and then back over to Artist Alley. Because honestly, trying to get up through the middle on either side of Artist Alley, no, it is so slow. That is the only thing that systemically I think that Fan Expo does need to change, is they need to spread that out more so more people can get around in there, because it just becomes a people parking lot, which is not useful for anybody. At that point in time, you might as well be sleeping on your feet, because what are you getting done? But otherwise, the staff are all phenomenally well trained. The individuals who are running the show, literally, look at that. I put a thumbs up thing. There's a thumbs up thing. The people who are running the show clearly are communicating the majority of the information correctly. The food services are all open. I know it's con food. Most people don't like con food. I don't like con food. Generally, I'll get a hot dog and maybe a coffee or something. But then it's time to stop eating that stuff and go get something else. Maybe walk down the street and get a Subway. But it's really well done. The air conditioning was cranked up. I got to tell you, you know that old thing where you go to Fan Expo and there's a smell to it? And this is, I know, it's an anecdotal, stupid story. The AC's cranked up. It really is. It was not too hot at any point in time. It was 23 degrees outside. It was perfectly comfortable walking around inside that show. So they do a good job. As I say, just be careful around the parking. Be careful around checking your times. And be careful around checking who's where, when. I know one guy who drove up from Hoboken that I was chatting with while I was there, and he had his dolly full. Like, I thought I had 2 boxes. I had a lot. No, this guy had books, and he was just getting, what's the word I would use here politely? There is no polite word for this one. He was having a hard time, let's put it that way, because the people that he lined up to see on certain days just weren't there. So something to watch for. But other than that, really good show, really well done. Definitely worth the money. I mean, my entire weekend pass was $159. Bought at the advanced early bird ticket price, but honestly, totally worth it for the 2 days that I went. Just the experiences that I had based on all these books around me. And I did no shopping. This was literally just me bringing my own books. Okay, well, can you sign this? Can you sign that? I bought books from a couple of vendors while I was there. But that was it. Really totally worth it. So everybody, that's my thought process on the Fan Expo. I know you guys will be watching this later because this is impromptu and we don't normally do lives here. So when you're catching this one later, if you have any questions or concerns, or you have any, Rob, can you clarify this about the whole Fan Expo thing? Type it in the comments. Just let me know. I'll get back to you. We won't be doing any live videos for a while. Again, I'm still dealing with, reading through all them through. I got caught up on. B, the fact that I just can't hold my breath long enough to carry on a sentence much later, which is why at 40 some odd minutes here, I'm now exhausted. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed this one. We will see you guys when we get back to regular videos later on, but I did want to get this out, just my brief thoughts on Fan, which is 42 minutes, which isn't actually brief. I wanted to get out my thoughts on Fan Expo Canada 2024. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you in the next video.